Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Nelson. Here's a look at what's going on this week in the news. We begin with news from around the country. The United States Conference of Catholic Bishops wrapped up their fall General Assembly this week in Baltimore with a new vice president and president and some new committee chairs. They also heard news on the church's preparation for the 5th National Encuentro of Hispanic Latino Ministry, as well as a presentation on the persecution of Christians in the Middle East and a visit by Pope Francis and a video message. Rome Reports has more on the meeting from Baltimore.
I'm pleased to have the opportunity.
Pope Francis has sent a personal video message for the occasion of the Fall General Assembly of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. The bishops are convening in Baltimore, Maryland. He asked them to continue to invite and welcome a culture of encounter, especially with Latinos. The Pope explained their challenges to break down the already existing walls that separate traditions and commend the 5th National Hispanic Pastoral Encuentro, which is a process of missionary activity to impact the quality of church ministry for Hispanic and Latin Catholics.
Our great challenge is to create a culture of encounter which encourages individuals and groups to share the richness of state traditions and experience, to break down walls, and to build bridges.
The Pope encouraged a missionary church spurred by the desire to spread the gospel message. During the meeting, various other topics such as helping persecuted Christians, cultural diversity, and justice and peace were also discussed. In addition, the elections for the new president and vice president of the U.S. Bishops' Conference were also conducted. Cardinal DiNardo was chosen as president, and Archbishop Gomez was elected vice president for the next 3 years.
Praise the Lord. More news now from around the country. On a voice vote, the District of Columbia City Council voted this past week to approve the Death with Dignity Act that permits physicians in the District of Columbia to legally prescribe lethal drugs to patients who have been deemed mentally competent and who have received a terminal diagnosis of 6 months or less. The measure moves to Mayor Muriel Bowser for approval or veto. If it is approved, the law would be subject to congressional review. Along with the D.C. Catholic Conference, opponents say the bill is flawed because it endangers high-risk populations, including the elderly, the uninsured and the underinsured, the homeless, low-income individuals, and those with intellectual disabilities. They also point out it does not require doctors to give patients a screening for depression. The patient is not required to notify family members before taking the medication, and no doctor, nurse, or legal witness is required to be present when the lethal dose is taken. If the bill eventually becomes law, the district would be the nation's 7th jurisdiction to allow physician-assisted suicide. Similar bills have been introduced and have failed in 22 states. Another note from the Bishops' Conference, the U.S. bishops chose to break from tradition this year's Fall's Assembly by celebrating Mass at the church known as the Mother Church of Black Catholics in West Baltimore, instead of the usual venue, the Baltimore Historic Basilica. Archbishop Joseph Kurtz, outgoing president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, said the bishop's presence was just one part of an effort to bring about healing of racial divides. Catholic News Service has more from Baltimore.
People didn't see the impact that the riots had on the communities. It has been a fight for us against the system. We need help here.
It's in the purview of the local bishop and local parishes and local communities to stand up in confronting racist activity.
The church is uniquely situated to bring people together in honest dialogue to foster healing. As bishops, we must recognize the significance of this moment and work with the faithful and affected communities toward lasting peace.
My hope is vast because that's what I'm hoping for, is an injection of hope in the community. I feel like this community as a whole is lacking faith. No longer do they believe that this can change, that it can be better, that we will ever get out of this rut. So with this move from the bishops, the whole mass is so visual. It's like a visual sign of hope. What this community needs isn't charity. We don't need presence. We need your presence. So I really think just commitment to coming in and seeing what goes on in this community and talking to the people about what they would like to see happen in this community is a step in the direction of empowering these people.
And finally in the news, during the meeting, the bishops were presented with a report from the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate at Georgetown University on the size and distribution of ethnic communities in the country. Archbishop Gustavo Garcia Sierra of San Antonio, chairman of the Committee on Cultural Diversity in the Church, which commissioned the study, called it groundbreaking because he said it combined for the first time all available data from Catholic and non-Catholic sources and mapped the multicultural and ethnic diversity of the church nationwide. Of the world's estimated 1.3 billion Catholics, the study found less than 6% live in the United States. Of the U.S. Catholic population, over 42.5 million are white, over 29.5 million are Hispanic or Latino, almost 3 million are Asian or Native Hawaiian, over 2 million are Black, African American, African or Afro-Caribbean, and over 500,000 are American Indian or Alaskan Native. According to the report, the Catholic Church is one of the most culturally diverse institutions in the United States, and Catholic institutions and ministries need to adapt and prepare for growing diversity. The report said 3/4 of those U.S. Catholics born before Vatican II are non-Hispanic white Catholics, and more than half, 54% of what it calls the millennial generation, which is Catholics born in 1982 or later, are Hispanic or Latino. Well, that's all the information we have for you this time. I'm Kevin Nelson. Don't forget, you can keep up to date on Catholic news throughout the week with Catholic Newsbreak right here on the Catholic TV network.